The invitation to our anniversary dinner sat on the counter, embossed with gold lettering that caught the light. 12 years, it read. I traced my finger over Nathan's handwriting, the way he'd scrawled, "Forever yours," at the bottom. The irony wasn't lost on me as I slipped my phone from my pocket and checked the notification that had just chimed. A photo, sent anonymously, of my husband kissing a woman I recognized instantly as Vanessa, his executive assistant. Her hand rested purposefully on a visibly pregnant belly. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. In that moment, the world should have collapsed around me. My fingers should have trembled. I should have screamed or cried or thrown something valuable against our expensive kitchen backsplash. Instead, I set my phone down with deliberate care and continued arranging the bouquet of lilies I'd bought earlier. The only indication that my 12-year marriage had just imploded was the slight tightening of my jaw and the way I methodically snipped each stem with surgical precision. "Mom, can I have a snack before dinner?" Lucas appeared in the doorway, headphones around his neck, completely unaware that his world was about to change forever. "Of course, sweetheart," I said, my voice steady as I reached for an apple and began slicing it. The knife felt heavy in my hand. 12 years, 2 miscarriages, finally our beautiful son, a waterfront home in Seattle's most exclusive neighborhood, and a husband who just shattered everything with one careless indiscretion. No, not one. This had been going on for months. I'd simply received confirmation of what I'd long suspected. I'm Rachel Wilson. At 41, I've built a life most would envy. Co-owner of a successful art gallery in Pioneer Square, mother to a brilliant 10-year-old boy, married to Nathan Wilson, the charismatic founder of a tech startup that had recently secured its 3rd round of funding. Our Madison Park home overlooked Lake Washington, and from our bedroom window, you could see Mount Rainier on clear days. We were the couple others pointed to as goals. At least that's what they thought. The anniversary dinner had been Nathan's idea. 12 years deserved celebration, he'd insisted, booking a private room at Harborview, the upscale waterfront restaurant where he'd proposed. He'd even sent formal invitations to our closest friends, something so uncharacteristically romantic that I'd briefly wondered if I'd been wrong about the late nights, the unexplained absences, the way he angled his phone away when texts came through. I hadn't been wrong. The anonymous message, a blurry photo clearly taken through a window, showed Nathan and Vanessa locked in an intimate embrace outside a doctor's office in Bellevue. The timestamp was from 2 days ago. The message attached read, "Thought you should know before your anniversary. He's been lying to both of you. Both of us, 2 women, 1 man, and apparently a baby on the way." When Lucas left the kitchen with his apple slices, I picked up my phone again and examined the photo more carefully. Vanessa Cole had worked for Nathan for nearly 2 years. Young, ambitious, with a marketing degree from Stanford and a smile that lit up board meetings. I'd watched how she looked at my husband during the company Christmas party last December, the way she laughed too hard at his jokes, touched his arm when she spoke to him. Nathan had dismissed my concerns. "She's just eager to learn, Rach. Not everyone has your confidence and success. Some people need mentoring." Mentoring? Is that what they called it now? I opened my messaging app and typed a single word to Nathan. "Congratulations." Then I continued preparing for our anniversary as if nothing had changed, because for the moment, Nathan didn't need to know that everything had. 3 hours later, I stood in front of our bedroom mirror, smoothing the fabric of my dress, a deep emerald silk that had cost more than some people's monthly rent. My hair fell in soft waves around my shoulders, and the diamond earrings Nathan had given me for our 10th anniversary caught the light. I looked collected, confident, untouchable. My phone buzzed on the vanity. Nathan. What do you mean? Smiled at my reflection. So he was going to play confused. I didn't respond. Another message followed. Are you talking about the Anderson contract? Did Greg tell you? The Anderson contract. How convenient that his company had just landed a major client. A plausible assumption for my congratulatory message. I applied another coat of lipstick and dropped my phone into my clutch without responding. Mom, Dad says we're going to be late, Lucas called from downstairs. I could hear Nathan's voice, in the background, instructing our son to straighten his tie. Coming, I called back, taking one final look in the mirror. Tonight would go exactly as planned. Nathan's plan for a beautiful anniversary dinner surrounded by friends, and my plan for what would come after. The drive to Harborview was filled with Lucas's chatter about his science project while Nathan kept glancing at me from the driver's seat. You look stunning, he said, reaching for my hand. I let him take it, noticing how he searched my face for clues about my earlier message. Thank you, I replied, my voice warm but offering nothing more. Nathan had reserved the glass-enclosed private dining room that jutted out over the water. Seattle's skyline provided a glittering backdrop as our friends greeted us with hugs and champagne. Greg Bennett, Nathan's business partner, kissed my cheek and whispered, You've got the patience of a saint putting up with his workaholic ways for 12 years. If only that had been our biggest problem. Diane Rivera, my closest friend and, not coincidentally, one of Seattle's most formidable divorce attorneys, gave me a questioning look as she embraced me. I'd called her last month when I'd found the first piece of evidence, a hotel charge on our credit card statement for a night Nathan claimed he'd been at a business conference in Portland. The conference had ended a day earlier. I'd checked. You okay? She murmured, her hand lingering on my arm. I nodded almost imperceptibly. Perfectly fine. The dinner progressed like a well-orchestrated play. Nathan gave a touching speech about meeting me at a charity auction where I'd outbid him for a painting he'd wanted. I lost the art but found the love of my life, he concluded, raising his glass. Our friends applauded. I smiled and sipped my champagne, wondering if Vanessa knew about this performance, or if she thought she was the only audience for his charm. Dessert had just been served, a decadent chocolate creation with 12 written in gold leaf, when the glass door to our private dining room swung open. Conversation halted as every head turned. Vanessa Cole stood in the doorway, her black dress stretching over her obviously pregnant belly, mascara streaking down her flushed cheeks. I'm sorry, she said, her voice breaking as her eyes locked with Nathan's. I couldn't do this anymore. Nathan froze, champagne glass suspended halfway to his lips, face draining of color. The room fell into a stunned silence, broken only by the soft instrumental music playing through hidden speakers. I set down my fork with deliberate care and dabbed my lips with my napkin before standing. Vanessa? I said calmly. What a surprise. Her eyes widened at my composure. She'd clearly expected screaming, crying, perhaps even a scene involving thrown champagne. Instead, she faced a woman who didn't seem shocked at all. Nathan finally found his voice. Vanessa, what are you doing here? This is completely inappropriate. I cut him off. Is it inappropriate, Nathan? I think what's inappropriate is getting your executive assistant pregnant while planning an anniversary dinner for your wife. The collective gasp around the table might have been comical under different circumstances. Lucas, thankfully, had gone to the restroom moments before, accompanied by Greg's teenage daughter. Nathan stood now, too, desperation etching lines around his mouth. Rachel, I can explain. Can you? I interrupted, my voice still eerily calm. Can you explain the hotel charges in Portland when your conference ended a day early, or the late-night emergency meetings that somehow always required Vanessa's presence? Or perhaps you'd like to explain the apartment you've been paying for in Belltown. Does the lease allow for children, or were you planning to upgrade once the baby arrives? Vanessa's mouth fell open. You knew? Not everything, I admitted, turning to face her fully. I didn't know about the baby until today. Nathan moved toward me, reaching for my arm. Rachel, please, let's discuss this privately. I stepped away from his touch. Why? You've involved all these people in your lies. Seems only fair they witness the truth. Diane stood now too, moving to stand beside me in silent support. The other guests remained frozen in their chairs, unwilling participants in the unraveling of what they'd thought was a perfect marriage. How long? I asked Vanessa directly. She swallowed hard. 8 months, she whispered. 8 months. Right around the time I'd been passed over for the gallery directorship I'd been working toward for years. Nathan had consoled me, assuring me my time would come, all while beginning an affair with a woman 14 years my junior. And the baby? I continued, gesturing to her stomach. 5 months along, she said, her hand moving protectively over her belly. Nathan stepped between. Rachel, that's enough. This isn't the place. No, I agreed. It isn't. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. But you made it the place when you invited your pregnant mistress to our anniversary dinner. I didn't invite her, he protested, glancing nervously at our friends. Vanessa flinched. You said you were going to tell her tonight. You promised. We wouldn't have to hide anymore. And there it was. Nathan had planned to use our anniversary dinner, surrounded by our closest friends, to announce he was leaving me. Perhaps he'd thought the public setting would prevent me from making a scene. Or maybe he'd wanted witnesses to prove how reasonably he'd handled everything when the divorce proceedings began. What he hadn't counted on was Vanessa growing impatient and arriving early, or me already knowing about their affair. I think, I said, reaching for my clutch, that this dinner is over. I turned to our friends. Thank you all for coming. I apologize for the dramatic conclusion to the evening. Greg Bennett cleared his throat. Rachel, do you want me to take Lucas home with us tonight? Sophie would love the company. I smiled gratefully. That would be wonderful, Greg, thank you. Nathan stepped toward me again. Rachel, wait. We need to talk about this. About arrangements going forward. Arrangements? I echoed, raising an eyebrow. For Lucas, for the house. We need to be adults about this. His businessman voice had returned, controlled, reasonable, problem-solving. I met his gaze, steadily. Yes, we do. And as adults, I suggest you and I meet with our respective lawyers before having any further conversations. A flicker of confusion crossed his face. Lawyers? Rachel, we don't need to make this adversarial. Actually, I cut in, I think you'll find we do. I opened my clutch and removed a folded document, placing it on the table. You might want to review this before you make any plans for our home or finances. Nathan stared at the paper. What is this? Our prenuptial agreement, I replied. The one your father insisted we sign before the wedding. The one you were so certain we'd never need. I paused. Page 4, Section 12 might be of particular interest. Diane, who had drafted the agreement 12 years ago when she was just starting her career, suppressed a smile beside me. She knew exactly what Page 4, Section 12 stipulated. In the event of infidelity, the offending party forfeited claim to any joint property acquired during the marriage, including business investments. Nathan's face paled as recognition dawned. He'd signed the document without reading it thoroughly, dismissing it as an unnecessary formality to appease his old money family. A family whose connections had provided the initial funding for his now successful tech company, a company in which I owned 20% of the shares, protected by that very prenup. You can't be serious, he whispered. I've never been more serious, I assured him. And just so we're clear, The prenup covers the Madison Park house, the cabin on Whidbey Island, and your company shares. I turned to Vanessa, whose expression had shifted from righteous indignation to dawning horror. I hope the Belltown apartment has a nice view. I suspect you'll be staying there longer than planned. I gathered my wrap and turned to leave, then paused, turning back to the stunned room. One more thing, Nathan. The gallery directorship I was passed over for last year? I turned it down. I've been working on opening my own space in the International District. The lease was finalized yesterday. I smiled. I didn't want to steal. Your thunder before your big announcement tonight. With that, I walked out of the private dining room, head high, leaving Nathan standing beside his pregnant mistress, surrounded by our closest friends, holding a prenuptial agreement that was about to cost him nearly everything. The cool Seattle evening air hit my face as I stepped outside. Rain had begun to fall, a gentle mist that caught the streetlights and turned the world slightly hazy, like an impressionist painting. I took a deep breath and felt something unexpected: relief. For months I'd been gathering evidence, consulting, quietly with Diane, preparing for what I had suspected was inevitable. The photograph today had merely accelerated the timeline. Nathan thought he had orchestrated a perfect exit strategy, using our anniversary dinner to transition smoothly from devoted husband to expectant father with a younger woman. Instead, he'd walked directly into the consequences of his own actions. I hailed a rideshare and gave the driver an address. Not our Madison Park home, but Diane's downtown condo, where I'd already arranged to stay for a few days while the initial storm passed. Lucas would be safe with Greg's family tonight, and tomorrow I would explain things to him as gently as possible. He would have questions, feel confusion and pain, but I would be steady for him, just as I had been tonight. As the car pulled away from the curb, my phone lit up with a message from Nathan. You knew all along? I watched Seattle's skyline blur through the rain-streaked window and typed a single response. Long enough. Then I silenced my phone and leaned back against the seat, closing my eyes. Tonight marked not just 12 years of marriage, but also its end. Yet somehow, despite everything, I felt stronger than I had in months. Because while Nathan had been planning his escape, I had been planning my future, a future that was still very much intact, even as my marriage crumbled behind me. Tomorrow would bring lawyers and logistics, difficult conversations and decisions. But tonight, in the quiet of a rainy Seattle evening, I had reclaimed my power in a single devastating moment of truth, and that was worth celebrating far more than any anniversary. The rideshare dropped me off at Diane's downtown condo, the sleek high-rise gleaming against Seattle's night sky. She wouldn't be home for at least another hour, long enough for me to collect myself before the inevitable questions. Evening, Mrs. Wilson. The doorman greeted me with a professional nod as I crossed the marble lobby. He didn't question why. I was arriving alone, my makeup slightly smudged, clutching my purse like a lifeline. In places like this, discretion was part of the service. Once inside Diane's guest room, I slipped off my heels and opened the closet where I'd stashed an overnight bag 3 weeks ago. Just in case, I'd told her then. She hadn't pressed for details, but her eyes had narrowed with understanding. Diane Rivera hadn't become one of Seattle's most formidable divorce attorneys by missing subtle signs. I changed into comfortable clothes and sat on the edge of the bed, finally allowing myself to check my phone. 17 missed calls from Nathan. 34 text messages. His desperation escalated with each one. Rachel, answer your phone. We need to talk. This isn't what you think. Where are you? Are you with Lucas? You're being unreasonable. That prenup was signed under duress. It won't hold up. Call me back immediately. The last one made me smile despite everything. Nathan still thought he could command me, as if I were one of his employees. As if tonight hadn't fundamentally altered the power dynamic between us. The truth was, Tonight had merely revealed what had been changing for months. The first hint had come last October. A receipt for a room at the Fairmont Olympic Hotel had fallen from Nathan's suit jacket while I was gathering clothes for dry cleaning. October 17th, a Tuesday when he'd claimed to be at an overnight conference in Portland. I'd called the hotel on a whim, asking if they had a record of a Nathan Wilson staying with them that night. They confirmed it instantly. A suite on the ER. 7th floor with a view of the city. Room service for 2. I hadn't confronted him. Instead, I'd tucked the receipt back into his pocket and begun paying attention in ways I hadn't before. The passwords on his devices that had mysteriously changed, the way he took calls in another room, the sudden need for team-building dinners that ran late into the evening, the credit card statements showing charges at jewelry stores that had yielded no gifts for me, small betrayals that built a devastating picture. In November, I'd opened our joint investment account to transfer funds for Lucas's school tuition and noticed a series of large withdrawals, $5,000 here, $7,000 there. Nearly $40,000 over 2 months, with no explanation. When casually questioned, Nathan had muttered something about opportunity investments and changed the subject. That was when I'd called Diane. I need to understand my options, I'd told her during a lunch that we'd disguised as a gallery visit. Hypothetically. There had been nothing hypothetical about the detailed notes she'd taken, or the flash drive she'd given me containing scans of all our important documents, including the prenuptial agreement Nathan had so carelessly signed 12 years ago. Keep records of everything, she'd advised. Bank statements, credit card bills, unexplained absences. Washington is a no-fault divorce state, but infidelity can influence property division if there's a prenup with a morality clause. Page 4, Section 12. Nathan's father, old money cautious about his son marrying a gallery girl from a middle-class background, had insisted on the infidelity clause. Nathan had laughed it off at the time. Dad's paranoid, he'd said, signing without reading the fine print. Like you'd ever have to worry about me straying. His carelessness was about to cost him dearly. By December, I'd opened separate bank accounts and begun quietly transferring my personal income from the gallery. Not enough to raise suspicions, but enough to create a financial cushion. I'd started digitizing important documents, securing copies of our tax returns, property deeds, insurance policies. I'd photographed our valuables and created a detailed inventory of everything we owned jointly. All while smiling beside Nathan at holiday parties, hosting his business associates for dinner and pretending. I didn't notice the way Vanessa lingered near him at the company Christmas party. The phone in my hand buzzed again. Nathan. I declined the call and set the phone on the nightstand. My preparation hadn't been just financial. I'd reconnected with old friends Nathan had subtly distanced me from over the years. I'd taken Lucas to visit my parents in Portland more frequently, strengthening bonds that had weakened during my years of devotion to Nathan's social calendar. I'd begun seeing a therapist, ostensibly for mild anxiety, but really to build a support system and documentation of my mental stability before the storm hit. Most importantly, I'd continued advancing my career. The gallery directorship I'd mentioned tonight had indeed been offered to me, along with a significant salary increase. I had declined it not out of defeat, but because I'd secured investors for my own gallery space, something Nathan knew nothing about. In his mind, I was still the accommodating wife whose career complemented but never overshadowed his. The wife who managed our social calendar, raised our son, and looked stunning at business dinners. That woman had been gradually disappearing for months. Tonight, she had vanished completely. A soft knock at the door pulled me from my thoughts. Diane entered, still in her evening dress but with her heels dangling from her fingers. "You," she said, dropping onto the bed beside me, "are the most composed woman I have ever met." I laughed softly. "Trust me, it's all surface." "Maybe," she conceded, "but what a surface." She kicked her legs up and leaned against the headboard. So, the prenup bomb. How did that feel? Like reclaiming something, I admitted. Though, I didn't expect to do it quite so publicly. Vanessa's entrance was certainly dramatic timing, Diane said. She looked absolutely shell-shocked when you pulled out that prenup, almost as stunned as Nathan. She thought she was delivering the killing blow, I said. Finding out I already knew and had countermeasures in place wasn't part of her script. Greg said Nathan was still sitting there staring at the prenup when he left with Lucas. Apparently, Vanessa stormed out in tears about 5 minutes after you did. Diane reached for my hand and squeezed it. You realize this is just the beginning, right? Nathan's going to fight. Men like him always do. I nodded. I'm counting on it. Fighting means mistakes, and mistakes strengthen our position. Diane's eyebrows shot up. My God, I should hire you, that's exactly right. She studied me for a moment. When did you first know? About the affair, I mean. I considered the question. Suspected? October? Knew for certain? December, when I saw them together outside a jewelry store downtown. He was holding her hand. It was unmistakable. And you said nothing for 4 months? Diane sounded impressed. I was gathering intelligence, I said simply, and building my exit strategy. My phone buzzed again, Nathan's 18th call of the night. I silenced it without looking. He'll try to invalidate the prenup, Diane warned. Claim he didn't understand what he was signing, that it's unreasonable, that circumstances have changed. Let him try. I felt a calm certainty. His father's still alive, and I'm quite sure Harrison Wilson remembers insisting on that document. In fact, I had lunch with him last month. Diane's eyes widened. You met with your father-in-law? Without Nathan? Harrison always liked me, I said. We've maintained a good relationship even though Nathan distanced himself from his parents, once the company took off. I mentioned I was concerned about some unusual financial movements in our accounts. And Harrison suggested I might want to review the prenuptial agreement his lawyer had drawn up before our wedding. He seemed unsurprised. Diane let out a low whistle. You've been playing chess while Nathan thought you were playing checkers. I've been protecting myself and my son, I corrected. Nathan made his choices. I'm simply ensuring Lucas, and I don't pay the price for them. Diane reached for her phone. I'm calling Melissa first thing tomorrow. She's the best forensic accountant in the state, and we'll need her to trace those withdrawals Nathan's been making. If he's been funneling money to set up a love nest for Vanessa, we'll find it. Already done, I said. I hired her last month. She's identified at least 3 accounts Nathan created that aren't on our financial disclosures. One is paying rent on an apartment in Belltown under Vanessa's name. Diane stared at me. You really have been busy. I've had time, I said. Simply, 4 months of quiet nights while Nathan worked late. 4 months of weekends when he had emergency meetings. 4 months of planning while he thought I was oblivious. What about Lucas? Diane asked softly. How are you going to handle that? The question cut through my carefully constructed composure. Lucas, my bright, sensitive boy who adored his father despite Nathan's increasing absences. Honestly, I said, my voice finally breaking, that's the part I'm most afraid of. Diane moved closer, wrapping an arm around my shoulders. You don't have to figure it all out tonight. Greg said Lucas was already asleep when they got to his house. You can pick him up tomorrow and talk to him then. I nodded, grateful for the reprieve, however brief. Nathan will want to see him. Nathan will have to follow proper protocols now, Diane said firmly. And that means working through attorneys until a formal custody arrangement is established. My phone lit up again, this time with a text from a number I didn't recognize. It's Vanessa, I said, reading the message. She wants to meet. Just the 2 of us. Diane's professional demeanor returned instantly. Absolutely not. No meetings, no conversations, nothing that could be used against you later. She says she's sorry, I continued, scrolling through the message. That she didn't know how serious it was between them at first, and by the time she realized, she was already pregnant. Classic, Diane muttered. Next, she'll tell you Nathan missiled her too, and you should join forces against him. I set the phone down without responding. She's 27, pregnant, and just watched her future crumble in a very public way. I almost feel sorry for her. Save your sympathy, Diane advised. If Nathan can't access the marital assets because of the prenup, guess who he'll be asking to support him and the baby? His pregnant girlfriend. I hadn't considered that angle. Nathan, cut off from our joint finances, would still have his salary from the company, but it wouldn't maintain the lifestyle he'd grown accustomed to. The lake house, the cars, the vacations, all of that had been possible because of our combined resources and smart investments. She must be terrified, I murmured. That's not your problem, Diane reminded me. Your priority is Lucas and your financial security. She was right, of course. The coming weeks would require focus and discipline. Nathan would deploy every resource to protect his assets, and I needed to remain 3 steps ahead. Get some sleep, Diane advised, standing. Up by tomorrow we go on the offensive. After she left, I lay back on the bed, fully clothed, too exhausted to move yet too wired to sleep. The ceiling above me was blank and white, a canvas for my thoughts. I pictured Lucas's face when I would have to tell him that his father had betrayed us, that our family was fracturing. I imagined Nathan's growing panic as he realized the extent of his miscalculation. I envisioned Vanessa, alone in an apartment that suddenly represented not freedom, but confinement. The future I had planned so meticulously was now in motion, yet it brought none of the satisfaction I had anticipated. Only a hollow certainty that I was doing what needed to be done. My phone lit up once more. Another text from Nathan. This isn't over. He was right about that, at least. This wasn't over. It was just beginning. Morning arrived with the muted gray light typical of Seattle in early spring. I woke disoriented, still in yesterday's clothes, my mouth dry and head pounding. For a blissful moment, I didn't remember. And then it all crashed back. The photo. The anniversary dinner. Vanessa's pregnant silhouette in the doorway. The prenup. My phone showed 37 missed calls and over 50 text messages. Nathan had been busy overnight. I ignored them all and headed for the shower, letting hot water sluice away the remnants of makeup and the stiffness in my shoulders. By the time Diane emerged from her bedroom, I was dressed in clothes from my emergency bag, hair pulled back, scrolling through emails on my laptop at her kitchen counter. You're frighteningly functional, she observed, making a beeline for her coffee maker. I gestured to the full pot I'd already brewed. I figured we both needed it. She poured a cup and leaned against the counter. Have you checked social media? I shook my head. I've been focused on work emails. The gallery won't run itself just because my marriage imploded. Well, brace yourself. She slid her phone across the counter. On the screen was an Instagram post from Vanessa, time-stamped 3 a.m. A tearful selfie captioned, "The truth is finally out." I never meant to hurt anyone. Love is messy and complicated. Pregnant and scared. Truth will set you free. The post had hundreds of comments, many from people I recognized, mutual friends, Nathan's colleagues, even parents from Lucas's school. She's controlling the narrative, I said, stomach tightening. Trying to, Diane corrected. But two can play that game. I pushed the phone back toward her. I'm not getting into a social media war. Not suggesting you should, but a simple, dignified statement might be wise. People are going to talk regardless. She was right. Seattle's tech and art communities were tightly intertwined, and news traveled fast. By now, everyone who had attended our anniversary dinner would have shared the story. Embellished versions would be circulating through text chains and coffee dates across the city. "What would you suggest?" I asked. Diane considered for a moment. "Something brief, acknowledging the situation without details, requesting privacy, for Lucas's sake." I nodded and opened the Instagram app on my own phone. I hadn't posted in weeks. My last update had been a gallery opening I'd curated, featuring emerging Northwest artists. The comments were already flooding in, people offering sympathy or asking veiled questions about what had happened. With careful consideration, I typed, "Thank you for the kind messages of support. This is a private family matter, and my focus remains on my son's well-being. I ask for respect and space as we navigate this difficult time." No accusations, no details. Nothing that could be used against me later, or that would embarrass Lucas when he was old enough to find it online. "Perfect," Diane approved as I showed her the draft. Dignified but acknowledging reality. I pressed post, then set my phone aside. "What's the plan for today?" "First, we file the divorce papers," Diane said, all business now. "I prepared them weeks ago based on our conversations, but we'll need to review and finalize. Then we secure temporary orders. For the house, for Lucas, for financial arrangements." "Nathan will fight for joint custody," I said. "Of course, he will," Diane agreed. "And he may well get it, eventually. But right now, with a pregnant girlfriend and no stable living situation, the court will likely grant you primary custody with visitation for Nathan." My stomach knotted at the thought of handing Lucas over to Nathan and Vanessa for weekends. My son, confused and hurting, shuttling between homes while his father played happy family with his new baby. "We'll request a guardian ad litem," Diane continued, sensing my distress. "Someone to represent Lucas's interests specifically. Most judges appoint them in high-conflict divorces." "Is that what this will be?" I asked quietly. "High conflict?" Diane's expression softened. "Nathan just lost access to significant assets because of his infidelity. He's about to have a new baby with a woman he's known for less than a year. His carefully constructed image as a family man and ethical business leader is in shambles." She shrugged. "Men like that don't go quietly." My phone rang. Greg Bennett. I answered immediately, worry for Lucas overriding everything else. "He's fine," Greg said before I could ask. "Still asleep, actually. Sophie wore him out with video games last night." Relief washed through me. "Thank you for taking him." "Not a problem. Listen, Rachel." Greg hesitated. "Nathan's been calling me all night. He showed up at our door around midnight, but I didn't let him in. He seemed unstable." Alarm prickled along my spine. "Unstable how?" "He'd been drinking, kept saying he needed to see his son, that you were turning Lucas against him." Greg's voice lowered. "I didn't want to expose Lucas to that, so I told him to come back when he was sober. He didn't take it well." "I'm so sorry," I said, horrified that Nathan had dragged Greg into this. "Don't apologize. I've known you both for years, and I've seen how Nathan's changed. This isn't out of nowhere." Greg paused. "The company board is meeting this morning. Emergency session. Nathan doesn't know yet." This was unexpected. "About last night?" "Partly," Greg confirmed. "But also about the Anderson contract. There are irregularities, things Nathan signed off on that don't align with our ethical guidelines." My mind raced. The Anderson contract. The one Nathan had assumed I was congratulating him about yesterday. The major client that was supposed to take their company to the next level. "What kind of irregularities?" I asked carefully. "I can't say more right now," Greg said, "but you should know that Nathan's position may be in jeopardy." The board has questions only he can answer, and his personal situation isn't helping matters. After we hung up, I relayed the conversation to Diane, who immediately saw the implications. If Nathan loses his position at the company, his income, situation changes dramatically, she said. We need to file today before anything is finalized. Washington is a community property state. Assets and debts acquired during the marriage are generally split equally, regardless of who earned them. But the prenup overrides community property laws where applicable, she finished. But we still need to establish the baseline of his current financial situation. My mind was spinning. Nathan's career in potential jeopardy. A pregnant girlfriend who was already trying to garner public sympathy. A son who would need to be told his family was disintegrating. And beneath it all, the nagging question of how I had missed the signs for so long, or perhaps more accurately, why I had chosen to ignore them. I need to pick up Lucas, I said, suddenly needing to see my son's face, to reassure myself that the one pure thing in this mess remained untouched. I'll come with you, Diane offered, in case Nathan shows up again. The drive to Greg's house in Queen Anne was tense. Every red light felt like an eternity. Every car that resembled Nathan's sleek Audi made my heart race. The Seattle morning was classic Northwest gloom, low clouds, a fine mist that wasn't quite rain but still required wipers. What do I tell Lucas? I asked as we turned onto Greg's tree-lined street. Diane considered this carefully. The truth, but at a level he can understand. Children are resilient, Rachel. They can handle difficult realities if they're presented with honesty and reassurance. He adores Nathan, I said quietly. Despite everything, the missed games, the canceled weekends, the constant calls during family time, Lucas thinks his dad hung the moon. Then make it clear that this isn't about Nathan being a bad father, Diane advised. It's about the relationship between you and Nathan changing. Lucas needs to know that both his parents still love him, even if they don't love each other anymore. The simplicity of it cut through my anxiety. This wasn't about punishing Nathan or turning Lucas against him. It was about navigating a new reality with as much grace as possible. Greg's Tudor-style home appeared ahead, and as we pulled into the driveway, I spotted Lucas in the front window. His face lit up when he recognized my car, and he disappeared from view, presumably racing to the door. "Ready?" Diane asked. I nodded, squaring my shoulders. "As I'll ever be." Lucas bounded out the front door before we even reached it, his dark hair tousled from sleep, still in the clothes he'd worn to the anniversary dinner, minus the tie. "Mom," he called, running toward me. "Sophie has the new Mega Racer game. We stayed up till almost midnight." I embraced him, breathing in the familiar scent of his shampoo and the lingering traces of chocolate that seemed permanently embedded in his skin, regardless of how often he bathed. "Sounds like you had fun," I managed, my voice steady despite the emotion threatening to overwhelm me. He pulled back, suddenly serious. "Is Dad okay? Mr. Bennett wouldn't let him in last night. He said Dad wasn't feeling well." I exchanged a glance with Diane, who gave me an encouraging nod. "Let's go home," I said. "We need to talk about some changes that are happening in our family." Lucas's expression clouded. At 10, he was perceptive enough to recognize the gravity in my tone. "Is it because of the lady who came to dinner? Dad's work friend?" The question caught me off guard. Of course Lucas had noticed Vanessa before being whisked away by Sophie. Of course he would have questions. "Yes," I said simply. "That's part of it. But let's talk more at home, okay?" He nodded reluctantly and turned to thank Greg and Sophie, who had appeared in the doorway. The normality of the exchange, a child thanking his friend's parent for a sleepover, felt surreal against the backdrop of everything else. As we drove away, Lucas glanced back at me in the rearview mirror. "Are you and Dad getting divorced?" The directness of the question shouldn't have surprised me. Lucas had friends with divorced parents. He understood the concept, if not the complexities. Yes, I answered, meeting his gaze in the mirror. We are. But that doesn't change how much we both love you. He absorbed this silently, looking out, the window at the familiar streets of Seattle sliding past, gray and misty. Finally, he asked, "Is it because Dad has a girlfriend?" The word girlfriend in my son's mouth sent a jolt through me, the adult concept rendered childlike and somehow more painful. It's complicated, I began, but Lucas interrupted. Tommy's dad had a girlfriend even though he was married to Tommy's. Mom. That's why they got divorced. He turned to look at me directly. Is Dad going to live with his girlfriend now? The simple, devastating clarity of children. No euphemisms, no social niceties, just the unvarnished truth as they see it. I think he will, I said quietly. And there's something else you should know. Vanessa, Dad's girlfriend, is going to have a baby. Lucas's eyes widened. Like, my half-brother or sister? Yes. He fell silent again, processing this bombshell in his own way. When he spoke again, his voice was smaller. Will I still see Dad? Of course, I assured him. The details will take some time to work out, but Dad will always be your father, and he'll always be part of your life. Whether Nathan deserved that guarantee was irrelevant. Lucas needed to hear it, and I would move heaven and earth to make it true, regardless of my personal feelings toward my soon-to-be ex-husband. As we approached our Madison Park home, I noticed an unfamiliar car parked in the driveway. Sleek, expensive, and definitely not Nathan's. Stay in the car, I instructed Lucas, tension returning to my shoulders. Diane touched my arm. That's Harrison's Mercedes. My father-in-law, here at our house without warning or invitation. Lucas, do you remember your grandfather Wilson? I asked. Lucas nodded. The one who gives weird presents but lots of money in my birthday cards? Despite everything, I smiled. Harrison Wilson's gift-giving was notoriously eccentric. Last Christmas, he'd given Lucas a first edition of Moby Dick, completely incomprehensible, to a 10-year-old, but valuable enough to put in a safety deposit box for his future. That's the one. He's here to visit, it seems. Lucas brightened. Cool. Can I show him my science project? It's about marine ecosystems and how climate change is affecting... Maybe later, I interrupted gently. First, I need to speak with him. Diane will take you for ice cream, okay? I could tell Lucas wanted to protest. Ice cream before lunch was normally forbidden, but the novelty won out over questions. As they drove away, I approached Harrison Wilson, who stood ramrod straight beside his car, impeccably dressed in a charcoal suit despite the early hour and weekend. At 72, he remained imposing, 6 feet of old money dignity and unwavering principles. Rachel, he greeted me, his voice as crisp as his appearance. I believe we have matters to discuss. I unlocked the front door, gesturing him inside. This is unexpected, Harrison. No more unexpected than my son's behavior, he replied, following me into the foyer. I received a rather frantic call from him at 4 this morning. Something about you freezing accounts and brandishing a prenuptial agreement at a public dinner. That's one version of events, I said carefully. Leading him into the living room, Harrison surveyed the space, the family photos on the mantel, Lucas's school books scattered on the coffee table, the half-finished puzzle we'd been working on last weekend, evidence of the life Nathan had discarded. I always liked you, Rachel, Harrison said abruptly. You have integrity. Nathan used to have it too, before success convinced him that rules applied to everyone but him. He turned to face me directly. I want you to know that I stand by the prenuptial agreement in its entirety. If Nathan violated the fidelity clause, he should face the stipulated consequences. The declaration stunned me. I had expected. What? Demands to be reasonable. Please to think of the family name, an attempt to mediate, not this unflinching support. Thank you, I managed, sinking onto the sofa. That means a great deal. Harrison remained standing, hands clasped behind his back. I understand there's a child involved. Not Lucas, the other one. I nodded. Vanessa is pregnant, 5 months along, according to her. Harrison's expression tightened. I see. And Nathan plans to… what? Set up house with this woman? Play happy families while abandoning the one he already has? That appears to be his intention, I confirmed, though he seems to have assumed he could do so while maintaining access to our joint assets and this house. Harrison made a sound. That might have been a suppressed laugh. Always Nathan's weakness, believing he could have everything on his terms without consequence. He moved to the window, looking out at the lake view that had been one of the main selling points when we'd purchased this house. I've spoken with the board. They're meeting now to discuss Nathan's future with the company. This confirmed what Greg had hinted at. Because of his personal situation? Harrison turned back to me. Because of the Anderson contract. Nathan offered terms that violated not only company ethics, but potentially federal regulations. When challenged by the legal team, he attempted to bypass normal channels. Greg Bennett brought it to the board's attention last week. Last week, before the photograph of Nathan and Vanessa had arrived on my phone. Before the anniversary dinner disaster. The pieces were falling into place. Nathan's increased agitation, the urgent need to access more funds, the pressure to make something happen with the Anderson deal. His world had already been unraveling. I had merely accelerated the collapse. What will happen? I asked. The board will almost certainly vote to remove him as CEO, at least temporarily, Harrison said bluntly. Too much liability otherwise. He'll retain his ownership shares. But operational control will pass to Greg as COO until a permanent solution is determined. I absorbed this information, understanding its implications for the divorce proceedings. Nathan, stripped of his position and salary, would be even more desperate to access our marital assets. I didn't come here to interfere in your divorce, Harrison continued. Nathan made his bed, but I did come to make you an offer. I raised an eyebrow, instantly wary. What kind of offer? I want to establish a trust for Lucas, he said. Separate from anything Nathan might claim or contest. Education, housing, future security, all provided for regardless of what happens with the divorce. The gesture was unexpected and touching. Despite his formal demeanor, Harrison clearly cared deeply for his grandson. That's very generous, I said carefully. But I don't want Lucas to become a pawn in whatever is happening between you and Nathan. Harrison's expression softened fractionally. This isn't about punishing Nathan. It's about protecting my grandson from the fallout of his father's poor choices. He paused. And about ensuring that you, as Lucas's mother, don't have to compromise. In the divorce negotiations out of financial necessity. The strategic brilliance of it was suddenly clear. A trust for Lucas would reduce my financial burden, allowing me to be more aggressive in pursuing what was rightfully mine in the divorce. I'll consider it, I said, after consulting with my attorney. Harrison nodded, seemingly satisfied. Of course, due diligence is essential. He moved toward the door, then stopped. One more thing, Rachel. Nathan mentioned you had proof of his infidelity. Tangible evidence. Yes, I confirmed. Photos, hotel receipts, bank statements showing withdrawals used to finance an apartment for Vanessa. Good, Harrison said grimly, because I suspect he'll try to claim it was a momentary lapse, a single indiscretion. Men like Nathan, men, who've never faced real consequences, often believe they can talk their way out of anything. As I showed Harrison out, I spotted a familiar Audi turning onto our street. Nathan. It appears my son has arrived, Harrison observed. Perfect. Timing. I'd rather not have this confrontation right now, I said quickly. Lucas will be back soon. Harrison straightened his already impeccable suit jacket. "Leave Nathan to me. Take your son somewhere for the day. Somewhere Nathan wouldn't think to look." As Nathan's car screeched to a halt behind his father's Mercedes, I made a split-second decision. "Thank you, Harrison." I slipped back inside, grabbed my purse and a jacket, and exited through the side door just as Nathan's voice rose in the driveway. "What the hell are you doing here, Dad?" Harrison's reply was too low to catch, but the tone was unmistakable. Cool, controlled, the voice of a man who had never needed to shout to command respect. I texted Diane. "Nathan at the house with his father. Need extraction. Bringing Lucas. To your place." Her reply came instantly. "On my way. Ice cream mission extended." As I made my way around the block to where I could safely wait for Diane without being spotted, I reflected on the morning's revelations. Nathan's career imploding. Harrison's unexpected alliance. The prenuptial agreement holding firm. The whisper of social media warfare beginning. All the pieces I had carefully arranged over the past 4 months were falling into place, creating a safety net that would catch Lucas and me when the final threads of my marriage snapped. Yet the victory felt hollow. There was no satisfaction in watching Nathan self-destruct, no joy in planning the division of the life we had built together. Only a weary determination to emerge from the rubble with my son's well-being and my own dignity intact. My phone vibrated with an incoming call, a number I recognized as belonging to my gallery assistant. "Rachel," she said when I answered, her voice tight with concern. "You need to know what's happening. Nathan just posted something on Twitter. It's bad." "What did he say?" I asked, stomach dropping. "He's claiming you're unstable. That you've been threatening self-harm, that he's been trying to get you help for months. He says that's why he hesitated to leave, and that you're using Lucas as a weapon against him." The calculated cruelty of it took my breath away. Nathan was attacking not just my financial security but my fitness as a mother, the one area where I was most vulnerable, where doubt could do the most damage. "Screenshot everything," I instructed, forcing calm into my voice, "and tell Marie to pull the security footage from the gallery for the past month." Marie, our security guard, kept meticulous records. "I need documentation of my comings and goings, my interactions with staff and clients." "Already on it," she assured me. "Everyone here knows he's lying, Rachel. We've got your back." As I ended the call, I spotted Diane's car approaching. Lucas waved enthusiastically from the passenger seat, ice cream cone in hand, blissfully unaware of the storm intensifying around him. I pasted on a smile and waved back, even as my mind raced through the implications of Nathan's new tactics. He was growing desperate, lashing out in ways that could cause lasting damage. The prenup might protect my financial interests, but custody was another matter entirely. If Nathan could convince a judge that I was unstable, the carefully constructed future I had planned for Lucas and myself would crumble. The secret advantage I had cultivated, the prenup, the financial preparations, the documented evidence of Nathan's betrayal, had shifted the balance of power. "Rachel, we need to address this immediately," Diane said, her voice low so Lucas wouldn't hear as he explored her condo's rooftop garden. "Nathan's social media posts are gaining traction." I scrolled through my phone, scanning the comments. On Nathan's Twitter thread, colleagues, acquaintances, even parents from Lucas's school were expressing concern and offering Nathan support. The narrative he'd constructed, of a devoted husband forced to leave an unstable wife, only to be vindictively punished, was finding a sympathetic audience. "He's playing the long game," I said, setting my phone down, "creating a record he can point to during custody hearings." "See, I've been worried about her for months," Diane nodded grimly. "It's a common tactic. Fortunately, we can counter it." She tapped at her tablet, pulling up a document. "We need to document your mental stability, your therapist's records, statements from colleagues, your regular schedule with Lucas, All of it creates a pattern of consistent, responsible behavior. I had already texted Dr. Winters, the therapist I'd been seeing since first suspecting Nathan's infidelity. She had immediately offered to provide a formal assessment of my mental state and a record of our sessions, which had focused on navigating marital difficulties, not suicidal ideation as Nathan claimed. We also need to file for an emergency. Temporary order, Diane continued. Nathan's abandoned the marital home and is now making public accusations that could damage your reputation and livelihood. We have grounds to request primary custody and exclusive use of the house pending formal hearings. Will that stop him from posting more lies? I asked. We can request a social media gag order as part of the temporary orders, she said. In high-profile divorces, judges often grant them to protect all parties' privacy. My phone pinged with an incoming email from Harrison Wilson's attorney. The subject line read simply, "Trust documents for review." That was fast, I murmured, opening the attachment. Diane raised an eyebrow. What's this? Harrison wants to establish a trust for Lucas, I explained, skimming the document. Education, housing, general welfare, separate from any marital assets Nathan might claim. Diane whistled low. That's significant and strategic. It removes one potential point of leverage Nathan might use. Harrison made it clear he's on our side, I said. He called Nathan's behavior a disgrace to the family name. Old money, Diane said with a nod of understanding. They care about appearances and legacy. Nathan's public affair with a pregnant employee half his age violates both. Another text alert, this one from my gallery assistant. Vanessa just showed up here asking for you. Should I call security? I stared at the message, momentarily stunned. Vanessa's at my gallery. Diane's expression hardened. Do not engage with her. That's exactly what Nathan wants. A confrontation he can spin as evidence of your instability. I quickly texted back. Don't call security unless she becomes disruptive. Tell her I'm unavailable and ask her to leave. Document everything. Smart, Diane approved. No escalation, just firm boundaries. Lucas appeared at the sliding glass door, cheeks flushed from the cool rooftop air. Mom, there's a garden with actual vegetables up here. Ms. Rivera grows tomatoes. Despite everything, his excitement brought a genuine smile to my face. That's amazing, sweetheart. Can we have a garden? Dad always said it was too much work, but maybe now. He trailed off, suddenly uncertain, as if remembering that now meant something different than it had yesterday. The moment crystallized my resolve. This wasn't just about protecting assets or winning a public relations battle. This was about creating a safe, stable environment where Lucas could still find joy in tomato plants and science projects, regardless of the adult chaos swirling around him. I think a garden is a wonderful idea, I said, meeting his eyes directly. We can start planning one for the spring. His face brightened, then clouded again. But what if we don't live in our house anymore? Dad said... What did Dad say? I asked carefully, tamping down the flare of anger. Lucas shifted uncomfortably. He called while I was at Mr. Bennett's. He said you might try to take me away from him, and that we might have to move because you were being mean about money stuff. Diane's expression darkened at this clear attempt to manipulate a child, but she remained silent, letting me handle the moment. I sat down on the couch, patting the space beside me. Lucas joined me, his small body tense with confusion and worry. Lucas, listen to me, I said gently. Our house belongs to both of us, you and me. We're not going anywhere unless we choose to. And no one is taking you away from your dad. You'll still see him regularly. Promise? His voice was small. I promise, I said firmly. And while things between your dad and me are changing, one thing will never change. We both love you very much. He seemed to consider this, then asked, Is Dad's new baby going to live with us too? The innocent question struck like a physical blow. Of course Lucas would wonder about his future half-sibling. Of course he would assume some form of blended family arrangement. No, sweetheart, I said carefully. Dad's new baby will live with him and Vanessa. But you'll get to know your little brother or sister when you visit Dad. Lucas processed this information silently, then announced with the matter-of-fact acceptance unique to children. I hope it's a brother. Sisters are annoying. The tension broke, and I laughed despite myself. You might change your mind about that someday. My phone buzzed again. My gallery assistant. Vanessa left when I told her you weren't available. She seemed upset but didn't cause a scene. She left a sealed envelope for you. Security has footage of her entire visit. I showed the message to Diane, who frowned. Don't open anything she gives you without me present. It could be manufactured evidence. The cynicism of Nathan's potential strategies was beginning to exhaust me. Every interaction now required analysis for hidden traps or future leverage. Let's focus on immediate steps, Diane said, returning to her tablet. I've drafted the emergency temporary orders. We need to file them today before Nathan can establish any contrary narrative with the court. While Lucas settled in with a movie in Diane's guest room, we reviewed the documents. The temporary orders requested: 1. Primary physical custody of Lucas for me, with supervised visitation for Nathan os 2. Exclusive use of the Madison Park house. 3. Continued access to all joint accounts for household and Lucas's expenses. 4. A restraint against disposing of marital assets. 5. A mutual social media gag order preventing either party from discussing the divorce online. Supervised visitation seems extreme, I noted, uncomfortable with the restriction despite everything. It's a starting position, Diane explained. Nathan's behavior has been erratic, showing up drunk at Greg's, making public accusations, attempting to manipulate Lucas over the phone. The court will likely modify it to standard visitation eventually, but starting with supervision gives us room to negotiate. I nodded reluctantly. The strategic chess game of divorce felt increasingly dehumanizing, reducing my 12-year marriage to tactical positions and negotiating chips. What about Vanessa? I asked. How does she factor into this? Legally, she doesn't yet, Diane said. But once the baby is born, Nathan will have obligations to that child as well. Child support calculations will need to account for both Lucas and the new baby. The thought of Nathan's resources being divided between two families added another layer of complexity. Would Lucas feel the impact of his father's divided attention and finances? Would he resent his half-sibling? A text from Greg Bennett interrupted my spiraling thoughts. Board meeting concluded. Nathan removed as CEO pending investigation. I've been named interim. He's not taking it well. Wanted to warn you. I showed Diane the message. Nathan's just lost his position. This changes things. It strengthens our case for securing assets before he can liquidate them out of desperation, she said. But it also makes him more dangerous. Men like Nathan, when they lose status and control, often lash out unpredictably. As if on cue, my phone rang. Nathan. After 24 hours of ignored calls and texts, I decided answering might provide useful information about his state of mind. Speakerphone, Diane mouthed, holding up her tablet to record the conversation. I nodded and accepted the call. Hello, Nathan. You bitch, he hissed, his voice slurred enough to suggest he'd been drinking. You planned this whole thing, didn't you? Turning my father against me, getting Greg to backstab me with the board, freezing me out of my own life. I kept my voice level, aware of both the recording and Lucas in the next room. I didn't attend your board meeting, Nathan. Whatever happened there was the result of your own actions. Don't play innocent, he snarled. You've always been calculating, always 3 steps ahead. You think I don't know you've been planning this for months? The irony wasn't lost on me. He was accusing me of exactly what I'd done, but for entirely wrong reasons. I hadn't orchestrated his professional downfall. I'd simply prepared for the personal one I'd seen coming. Nathan, you're upset and clearly not sober. This isn't a productive conversation. You don't get to dismiss me. His voice rose dangerously. I built everything we have. That house, your gallery career, our lifestyle, all of it exists because of me. The familiar refrain, Nathan, positioning himself as the sole architect of our success, despite my equal contributions both financially and as the primary parent enabling his long work hours. We built our life together, I corrected calmly. And I've never denied your professional accomplishments. But your personal choices have consequences, Nathan. Surely you understand that. Don't patronize me, he snapped. You've turned my own father against me. He came to the house, told me I'd disgraced the family, that the prenup would stand. My father, taking my wife's side. I remained silent, letting him fill the space with his anger. And now the board, he continued bitterly. Temporary removal. Pending investigation. What a joke. Greg's wanted my position for years. He saw an opportunity and took it, with your encouragement, I'm sure. I had nothing to do with the board's decision, I repeated, but I'm aware of concerns about the Anderson contract. If there were ethical breaches. Ethics? Nathan laughed harshly. That's rich coming from the woman who's been spying on me, gathering evidence, planning to destroy me while smiling in my face. Diane made a slashing gesture across her throat. End the call. Nathan, this conversation isn't productive, I said firmly. I suggest you speak with your attorney. All further communication should go through proper channels. You don't dictate terms to me, he growled. I want to see my son. Now. Put Lucas on the phone. That's not happening, I said, my voice hardening. You've been drinking and you're clearly agitated. Lucas deserves better than to be exposed to that. He's my son too, Nathan shouted, loud enough that I flinched away from the phone. You can't keep him from me. I'm not keeping him from you, I said evenly. I'm protecting him from this version of you. When you're sober and calm, we can discuss appropriate visitation through our attorneys. I'll destroy you for this, he promised, his voice suddenly cold and controlled, the threatening shift more alarming than his previous yelling. By the time I'm done, you'll be lucky if you get supervised visits with Lucas. I have resources. You can't imagine, Rachel. Friends in places that matter. Diane was already typing frantically on her tablet, documenting the threat. Is that a threat, Nathan? I asked, keeping my voice steady. It's a promise, he said softly. You think you've won because of some prenup and a few hotel receipts? You have no idea what I'm capable of when I'm backed into a corner. I'm ending this call now, I said. Please don't contact me directly again. Have your attorney reach out to Diane Rivera when you're ready to discuss arrangements for Lucas. I disconnected before he could respond, my hand trembling slightly as I set the phone down. Well, Diane said grimly, that was illuminating and legally useful. She tapped her tablet. Threats, implied intent to contest custody, admission, of drinking, all excellent fodder for our emergency filing. He's unraveling, I said quietly, disturbed by the conversation despite knowing it strengthened our legal position. This wasn't the calculating, controlled Nathan I'd been married to for 12 years. This was someone volatile and unpredictable. People show their true colors when they lose control, Diane observed. The mask slips. The thought sent a chill through me. Had Nathan always harbored this capacity for vindictiveness? Had I simply never triggered it before because I'd played by his rules? What if he follows through? I asked. He does have connections. Judges he's golfed with, politicians his company has donated to. That's why we document everything, Diane said firmly. Every threat, every erratic behavior, every attempt to manipulate Lucas. The legal system isn't perfect, but it generally works when presented with overwhelming evidence. My phone pinged with another text from Greg. Nathan just arrived at the office demanding access. Security engaged. Police may be called. Just FYI. I showed Diane, who immediately began typing again. This is excellent for our case, though. Concerning for everyone's safety, she muttered. A public meltdown at his workplace after being removed as CEO. No judge will view that favorably in a custody dispute. The calculated part of me recognized the strategic advantage. The human part felt only sadness for the man I'd once loved, now spiraling in such a public, self-destructive way. We should. Move quickly, Diane said, gathering her things. I'll file these emergency orders immediately. Given Nathan's escalating behavior, there's a good chance the judge will grant them today. What about Lucas? I asked, glancing toward the guest room where he was still absorbed in his movie. I don't want to leave him after everything that's happened. Bring him to my office, Diane suggested. We have a comfortable conference room where he can continue watching movies while we handle the filing. Then we'll head straight to the courthouse. Lucas accepted the change of plans with minimal questions, though I could sense his growing awareness that something significant was happening. He'd always been perceptive. Too perceptive sometimes, noticing tensions adults thought they were hiding. At Diane's sleek downtown law office, Lucas settled into a plush conference room with his tablet and headphones, while Diane and I finalized the emergency filing in her office. We have a stroke of luck, Diane announced, hanging up her phone. Judge Watkins is handling emergency filings today. She's familiar with high-conflict divorces and has little patience for manipulation tactics. If Nathan's public meltdown escalates, we'll have a sympathetic ear. I nodded, distracted by a new email notification. From Vanessa Cole, subject line, "Please read, not what you think." Diane, I said, showing her my phone. Vanessa's emailing now. Diane frowned. They're coordinating. Nathan's playing bad cop with threats and intimidation while she tries the sympathetic angle. Classic manipulation strategy. Should I read it? I asked. Yes, but don't respond, Diane advised. Knowledge is power, and understanding their approach helps us counter it. I opened the email, scanning its contents. Rachel, I know you have every reason to hate me, but please believe this isn't what I wanted or expected. Nathan told me your marriage was already effectively over, that you stayed together only for appearances and Lucas's sake. He said you had an understanding. I'm not trying to excuse what happened, but I want you to know I'm not the villain in this story. I didn't set out to destroy your marriage or hurt Lucas. The baby complicates everything, I know, but this child deserves a chance, just like Lucas does. Nathan is spiraling because he feels trapped between impossible choices. His obligation to his existing family versus his responsibility to his unborn child. Could we meet? Just the two of us? Woman to woman? There might be a solution that protects everyone's interests, especially the children. Please consider it. The envelope I left contains sonogram pictures. I thought maybe seeing that this is a real baby, not just an abstract concept, might help. Vanessa. I set the phone down, momentarily speechless at the calculated emotional manipulation. Wow, Diane said, reading over my shoulder. She's either remarkably naive or remarkably calculating. The sonogram pictures are a particularly nice touch, I said, unable to keep the bitterness from my voice. Using an unborn child as an emotional bludgeon. It's a common tactic, Diane said. Appeal to maternal instincts, create a connection between the children, position herself as a reasonable party seeking compromise while Nathan plays the heavy. Do you think she knows about his social media posts? The accusations about my mental health? Diane considered this. Hard to say. She might be completely in sync with his strategy, or she might be operating independently, trying to secure her own position now that she realizes how precarious it is. I thought about Vanessa. 27, pregnant, watching her planned future with a successful CEO disintegrate as Nathan lost his position and faced financial restrictions from the prenup. Was she a calculating homewrecker or another victim of Nathan's manipulations? The truth probably lay somewhere in between. Ignore it for now, Diane advised. Let's focus on the emergency orders. We can address Vanessa once those are secured. The next few hours passed in a blur of legal documents, courthouse waiting rooms, and hushed consultations. Lucas alternated between his tablet games and sketching in a notebook Diane's assistant had provided, occasionally asking when we could go home. Soon, sweetheart, I promised each time, hating the uncertainty I couldn't shield him from. By late afternoon, we had our answer. Judge Watkins, a stern-faced woman with silver-rimmed glasses and a reputation for no-nonsense efficiency, granted the emergency orders with minimal modifications. 1. I received temporary primary physical custody of Lucas 2. Nathan was granted supervised visitation twice weekly, to be overseen by a court-appointed monitor 3. Exclusive use of the Madison Park house was granted to Lucas and me. 4. A freeze was placed on all marital assets except for normal household and business expenses. 5. A mutual social media gag order was imposed, prohibiting either party from discussing the divorce online. Most significantly, Judge Watkins ordered a full psychiatric evaluation for Nathan before any modification to the visitation schedule would be considered, a direct response to the police. Report filed when Nathan had been escorted from his company offices in a state of intoxicated belligerence. This is an excellent outcome, Diane whispered as we left the courtroom. Better than we could have expected. I felt no triumph, only relief that Lucas would be protected from the worst of Nathan's volatility while he worked through whatever crisis he was experiencing. What happens now? I asked as we collected Lucas from the court childcare center. Now we serve Nathan with the orders and prepare for the temporary orders hearing, Diane explained. That will likely be scheduled within 2 weeks. In the meantime, these emergency provisions govern. Will Nathan comply? I wondered aloud, remembering his threatening tone during our phone conversation. He doesn't have a choice, Diane said firmly. Violating a court order would severely damage his case and could result in contempt charges. His attorney will make that very clear to him. That assumed Nathan was listening to legal counsel rather than his own wounded ego. Based on his recent behavior, I wasn't convinced. As we drove back to Madison Park, Lucas fell asleep in the back seat, emotionally exhausted from the day's events. I watched his peaceful face in the rearview mirror, marveling at children's resilience. He seems to be handling things remarkably well, Diane observed, following my gaze. For now, I said softly, but I worry about the long-term effects. Nathan's always been his hero. Children are adaptable, Diane assured me. With consistent support and honest communication, Lucas will find his way through this. And someday, he'll understand that you were protecting him, not keeping him from his father. I hoped she was right. The thought of Lucas someday resenting me for the boundaries I was establishing to protect him was almost unbearable. As we turned onto my street, I immediately noticed the unfamiliar car parked in my driveway. Not Nathan's Audi or Harrison's Mercedes, but a sleek black SUV with tinted windows. "Stop the car," I said sharply. Diane braked at the corner, keeping us just out of sight of my house. "Someone's there," I said, tension returning to my shoulders. "I don't recognize the vehicle." Diane reached into her purse and extracted her phone. "I'm calling the service processor. They should have delivered the emergency orders to Nathan by now. Let me see if they found him." While she spoke in low, urgent tones to someone on the other end, I studied the house, looking for any sign of movement. The curtains were drawn, not how I'd left them, and lights were visible in the kitchen. "Nathan was served 30 minutes ago at the Four Seasons Hotel," Diane reported, ending her call. "Apparently he's taken a room there since, being locked out of the house. "Then who's in my house?" I asked, alarm rising. Diane's expression hardened. "I'm calling the police. The emergency order gives you exclusive possession of the residence. Anyone else being there is trespassing." While Diane made the call, I continued watching the house, weighing options. Lucas was still asleep in the back seat, mercifully unaware of this new complication. "Police are on their way," Diane said, ending the call. "They advised us to stay put and not approach the house." 10 minutes later, 2 police cruisers arrived, pulling up in front of my house with lights flashing but sirens silent. 4 officers approached cautiously, 2 circling to the back while 2 went to the front door. From our vantage point, we could see the door open, revealing a woman's silhouette. Even at a distance, I recognized Vanessa's distinctive posture, one hand resting protectively on her pregnant belly as she spoke with the officers. "Unbelievable," Diane muttered. "She broke in? Maybe Nathan gave her a key," I suggested, watching as the officers escorted Vanessa outside, speaking to her with what appeared to be stern but not aggressive demeanors. After several minutes of conversation, an officer approached our car, having apparently been directed to our location by Diane's description to dispatch. "Mrs. Wilson?" he asked as I rolled down the window. "Yes, that's me." "We've secured the premises," he reported. "The woman claims Mr. Wilson gave her permission to collect some of his personal belongings. She had a key, but no legal right to enter, given the emergency order issued today." "Is anything missing or damaged?" I asked. "Not that we could determine in a cursory examination," he said, "but you'll want to check thoroughly once you return. Ms. Cole has been issued a warning and escorted off the property. She won't be charged this time, but she's been advised that any further attempts to enter would result in criminal trespass charges." "Thank you, officer," I said, relief mixing with lingering concern. "We'll need a statement from you," he continued. "But we can take that at the house if you prefer, given that you have a child with you." I glanced at Lucas, still miraculously asleep despite the police lights. Yes, that would be better. As the officer returned to my house, Diane touched my arm. "This is actually helpful for our case. Nathan gave his pregnant girlfriend a key to your house after being served with orders explicitly granting you exclusive possession. It demonstrates a blatant disregard for court orders. The strategic advantage did little to ease my discomfort. My home, the place that should have felt safest, had been violated. What had Vanessa really been looking for? What might she have found or planted? 30 minutes later, after giving my statement and receiving assurances that officers would conduct extra patrols past my house for the next few days, I finally carried my still sleeping son into our home. Diane followed, her expression making it clear she didn't intend to leave me alone just yet. "I'll check the house," she said, setting her briefcase down. "You get Lucas settled." I carried him upstairs to his bedroom, grateful that this space, at least, seemed untouched by the day's chaos. His dinosaur bedspread, solar system mobile, and overflowing bookshelf remained exactly as they should be. Islands of childhood normalcy in a sea of adult complications. After tucking him in and kissing his forehead, I joined Diane for a room-by-room assessment of the house. "Nathan's office has definitely been disturbed," she reported, gesturing to the home office that had primarily been Nathan's domain. Drawers left open, files moved. She was looking for something specific. I surveyed the room, noting subtle differences from how I remembered it. "His laptop is gone," I realized. "It was on the desk the last time I was in here." "Financial records, possibly," Diane suggested. "Or evidence of the Anderson contract irregularities. Could be anything he didn't want discovered during divorce proceedings." We continued through the house, finding similar signs of searching. In our bedroom closet, and the filing cabinet in the kitchen where we kept household documents. She was thorough, Diane observed, but apparently didn't find what she was looking for, or we'd see more disruption. In the kitchen, I discovered a more personal intrusion. family photos had been removed from their frames on the display shelf. Pictures of Nathan and Lucas at baseball games, family vacation snapshots, Lucas's school portraits, all gone, leaving empty frames. "She took our family photos," I said, anger finally breaking through my composed facade. "What possible justification?" "Nathan probably asked for them," Diane said. "Or she took them on her own initiative, thinking they might comfort him. Either way, it's petty and inappropriate, but not worth your energy right now." She was right, of course. In the grand scheme of today's events, emergency court orders, Nathan's professional implosion, and a police-escorted intruder, missing photographs were a minor concern. Yet somehow, this particular violation felt intensely personal in a way the legal maneuvers hadn't. Diane's phone chimed with an incoming message. "Interesting," she said, reading it. "The process server reports that when Nathan was served at the Four Seasons, Vanessa wasn't present. They found him alone at the hotel bar." I processed this information. So she came here while he was being served, without his knowledge? Possibly, Diane agreed. Or under his direction, timed to coincide with the serving as a distraction. Hard to know for certain. Either scenario added another disturbing layer to the situation. Either Nathan and Vanessa were coordinating their efforts with surprising, strategic sophistication, or Vanessa was operating independently, perhaps realizing that Nathan's position was increasingly precarious and trying to secure her own interests. After Diane finally left, promising to return first thing in the morning, I found myself alone in my kitchen at midnight, surrounded by empty picture frames. The silence felt oppressive after the day's chaos. No lawyers strategizing, no courthouse, murmurs, no police radios. Just the soft hum of the refrigerator and distant traffic on Lake Washington Boulevard. I poured myself a glass of wine, the expensive Cabernet Nathan had been saving for a special occasion, and took it to the back deck. The April night was cool but not uncomfortable, the lake a vast darkness punctuated by the distant lights of Mercer Island. This view had sold us on the house 12 years ago, Nathan declaring it worthy of our future success. Now I wondered if I would keep this house, or if the memories embedded in every room would eventually prove too heavy. My phone buzzed with a text from a number I didn't recognize. "It's Vanessa. We need to talk. Not about Nathan, about the pregnancy and what happens after." I stared at the message, weighing my options. Diane would advise ignoring it completely. Any communication could be twisted or used against me later. But curiosity and something else, perhaps a desire to reclaim some agency in this unfolding drama, made me respond. "You broke into my home today, took family photos. Why would I talk to you now?" Her reply came quickly. "I had a key. Nathan said he still lived there." I didn't know about the court order until the police told me. The photos were Nathan's request. "I'm sorry." The apology seemed hollow given the violation, but her claim about Nathan's guidance aligned with my suspicions. Nathan had deliberately sent her into a legally precarious situation, perhaps hoping to create an incident he could exploit later. I typed, "No more communication. Any necessary contact goes through attorneys." Her response surprised me. "I don't have an attorney. Nathan promised to take care of everything, but now he's falling apart. I'm scared for my baby." The manipulation was so transparent it was almost laughable, playing on maternal sympathy, positioning herself as another of Nathan's victims. Yet I couldn't entirely dismiss the possibility that it contained some truth. Vanessa was younger, less established professionally, and now carrying a child whose father was rapidly self-destructing. I took another sip of wine, considering my response. Engaging further violated every principle of strategic divorce management, but completely ignoring her felt somehow wrong, not legally, but humanly. Finally, I typed, "Find your own attorney. Nathan will be required to pay child support once paternity is established." That's all I can tell you. Her reply was immediate. I don't want his money. I want my child to know their brother. Lucas shouldn't suffer because of adult mistakes. The mention of Lucas sent a fresh surge of protectiveness through me. I set my phone down without responding, unwilling to discuss my son with the woman who had helped destroy his family. Whatever Vanessa's motivations or circumstances, she had made her choices. Now she would face their consequences, just as Nathan was facing his, and just as I was facing mine. I finished my wine in silence, watching the gentle waves on the lake, until the chill finally drove me inside. As I locked the doors and checked on Lucas one last time, I realized this day, with its courthouse drama, police intervention, and emotional confrontations, was merely the opening salvo in what promised to be a protracted battle. The weapon Nathan had wielded today had been volatility, unpredictable, intimidating emotional outbursts designed to throw me off balance. My countermeasure had been careful, documented reason, court orders, police reports, strict adherence to legal protocols. Round 1, arguably, had gone to me, but Nathan was nothing if not adaptive. His next approach would likely shift once he realized emotional terrorism wasn't working. The question was, what form would it take, and was I prepared? Morning arrived with Lucas bouncing on my bed at 6:30, apparently recovered from yesterday's emotional exhaustion and eager to tell me about a dream involving robot dinosaurs. His resilience both amazed and worried me. Was he genuinely processing everything healthily, or simply compartmentalizing in ways that might cause problems later? Can we have pancakes? He asked, already heading for the stairs. Dad always makes them on Saturdays. The casual reference to Nathan's weekend tradition, one he'd actually maintained fairly consistently despite his other absences, sent a pang through me. These small routines formed the architecture of Lucas's sense of normalcy, and they were now disrupted along with everything else. Absolutely, I agreed, following him downstairs. And I think we have chocolate chips to add. As Lucas measured flour with the careful concentration of a scientist handling volatile compounds, my phone rang. Diane. Nathan's attorney finally surfaced, she said without preamble. Lawrence Chen from Blackwell and Hayes. I recognized the firm immediately, one of Seattle's most aggressive and expensive divorce practices, known for representing tech executives and old money families. That's concerning, I said, turning slightly away from Lucas. It's actually beneficial, Diane countered. Chen is ruthless but ethical. He doesn't play dirty tricks, and he'll recognize when a case is unwinnable. Unlike some attorneys, who encourage hopeless fights for the billable hours, Chen will advise Nathan realistically about his position. And that position is? Precarious, Diane said with satisfaction. Chen requested a meeting, just attorneys initially. It's scheduled for 11. After breakfast, I arranged for Lucas to spend a few hours with his friend Ethan, whose parents had been quietly supportive since learning about the separation. Their offer of anytime childcare had become invaluable as the logistics of single parenthood collided with legal necessities. At 10:30, I arrived at Diane's office, having changed 3 times before settling on a navy sheath dress that projected professional confidence without appearing unnecessarily aggressive. Image management had become yet another component of the divorce chess game. Too polished might suggest indifference to the marriage's end. Too disheveled could support Nathan's claims about my mental state. Perfect outfit choice, Diane approved as I entered her office. Professional but not intimidating. Chen is old school. He responds better to understated elegance than power suits. I'm not attending the meeting, I reminded her. No, but Chen will report back to Nathan, including how you presented yourself while waiting. Everything feeds the narrative. The constant performance was exhausting, but I understood its necessity. Perception could influence everything from settlement offers to custody arrangements. What's our objective today? I asked, settling into the visitor's chair across from Diane's imposing desk. Information gathering, she replied, organizing files into precise stacks. We need to understand Nathan's strategy moving forward. His initial emotional approach has failed. Now he'll try something else, either reasonable negotiation through Chen or some new angle we haven't anticipated. Lawrence Chen arrived precisely at 11, a compact man with silver-streaked hair and impeccable tailoring. He offered me a respectful nod as Diane's assistant escorted him past the reception area, where I pretended to read a magazine. "Mrs. Wilson," he said, his voice carrying the faintest trace of a British boarding school accent. "I regret the circumstances of our meeting." "As do I," I replied evenly, neither hostile nor warm. With another slight nod, he followed the assistant into Diane's office, leaving me to wonder what approach Nathan had instructed him to take. The meeting lasted precisely 90 minutes. When Chen emerged, his expression revealed nothing, but Diane's subtle smile as she showed him out suggested the discussion had gone favorably for our side. "Well?" I asked once we were alone in her office. "Nathan's desperation is showing," she reported, settling behind her desk. Chen opened with a reasonableness offensive, suggesting we set aside emotions and work toward an amicable solution that benefits Lucas. "That sounds unexpectedly mature," I said cautiously. "It's a tactical retreat," Diane clarified. Nathan realized his aggressive approach backfired spectacularly. Now he's trying to position himself as the reasonable party while painting your emergency filings as an overreaction. "Did Chen mention the prenup?" "Oh yes," Diane said with a satisfied smile. "He tried to suggest it was signed under duress, that Nathan didn't understand its implications, that 12 years of marriage rendered it effectively void, standard challenges, all easily refuted. And when I countered each argument and mentioned Harrison Wilson's willingness to testify about his son's full understanding of the document, Chen shifted focus remarkably quickly. The strategic value of Harrison's support continued to prove invaluable. Nathan's own father standing against him carried both legal and psychological weight that would be difficult to overcome. "What's their counter-proposal?" I asked. Diane's expression turned contemplative. "This is where it gets interesting. Nathan is offering to waive any claim to the house and your gallery business. In exchange, he wants unrestricted joint custody of Lucas and a 40% share of your joint investment accounts." I considered this. The house and gallery were already protected by the prenup's infidelity clause, making his concession meaningless. The investment accounts were substantial, nearly $2. $8 million accumulated through strategic investments over our marriage. 40% would give Nathan over $1 million despite his clear violation of the prenup. Most concerning, however, was the unrestricted joint custody request. Given Nathan's recent volatility and the pending psychiatric evaluation ordered by Judge Watkins, this seemed both unrealistic and potentially dangerous for Lucas. He's offering to concede things he can't win anyway, asking for money he isn't entitled to, and demanding custody arrangements that no judge would grant given his recent behavior, I summarized. "Precisely," Diane confirmed. "It's a starting position, obviously, but an illuminating one. It shows he's still not accepting the reality of his situation." "What did you counter with?" "I didn't," Diane said, leaning back in her chair. "I simply reminded Chen that the prenup's infidelity clause had been triggered and documented, that Nathan's recent behavior had necessitated police involvement, and that any custody arrangement would need to follow the court's requirements for psychiatric evaluation. And Chen requested time to consult further with his client," she reported with satisfaction. "Which means he's going to have a very difficult conversation with Nathan about legal realities versus emotional desires." I should have felt triumphant. Every legal and strategic advantage was tilting in my favor. Yet I felt only a hollow sort of sadness. Not for the marriage, which had clearly been broken longer than I'd realized, but for the decent man Nathan had once been. before success and entitlement had warped him. "Do you think Nathan will accept reality once Chen explains it?" I asked. Diane's expression turned serious. "Rarely does anyone immediately accept a complete loss of control, especially men accustomed to dominance. Nathan might appear to accept reality while seeking alternative means of regaining power." "What alternative means?" "Hard to predict," she admitted. "But desperation breeds creativity. Stay vigilant." That vigilance was tested sooner than expected. When I picked up Lucas from his playdate, Ethan's mother pulled me aside with an uncomfortable expression. "Rachel, I thought you should know," she said quietly while the boys gathered Lucas's things. "Nathan called here this morning asking to speak with Lucas. When I explained he was playing with Ethan and not available, Nathan said some concerning things." My stomach tightened. "What kind of things?" She hesitated. "He implied you were keeping Lucas from him illegally, that you were unstable and potentially harmful to Lucas. He asked me to keep an eye on Lucas and report any concerning behavior to him directly." The calculated attempt to turn Lucas's social circle into surveillance operatives sent a chill through me. Nathan was trying to build a network of informal monitors who might inadvertently provide evidence for his custody case. "There's a court order granting me temporary primary custody," I explained, keeping my voice calm despite my rising anger. "Nathan has supervised visitation rights pending a psychiatric evaluation. I'm not keeping Lucas from him. The court is requiring supervision." Given Nathan's recent behavior, her expression registered surprise, then understanding. "I thought it might be something like that." Nathan sounded not himself. "I've known you both for years, and this didn't align with what I've observed." The conversation highlighted a new front in Nathan's campaign. The court of public opinion among Lucas's friends' parents, our neighbors, the school community. While the social media gag order prevented direct online attacks, nothing stopped Nathan from planting seeds of doubt through personal conversations. "Thank you for telling me," I said sincerely. And for not simply accepting Nathan's version of events. On the drive home, I contemplated this new tactic. Nathan was attempting to isolate me socially while gathering potential witnesses for his custody case. It was calculated, patient, and far more sophisticated than his previous emotional outbursts. "Mom, is Dad coming home soon?" Lucas asked from the back seat, interrupting my thoughts. The innocent question required a careful answer, truthful enough to provide security, but not burdening him with adult complexities. "Dad is staying somewhere else right now," I explained gently. "Remember how we talked about the changes in our family? Part of those changes means Dad will have his own place." Lucas considered this. "But I'll still see him, right? He promised to take me to the Mariners game next weekend." The mention of promises Nathan had made without consulting me, and which now required court-approved supervision to fulfill, created yet another delicate navigation. "We're working out when you'll spend time with Dad," I said carefully. "It might not be next weekend, but you will definitely see him." "Will Vanessa be there too?" he asked, his tone neutral but curious. The question caught me off guard. "Would that bother you if she was?" Lucas shrugged with the pragmatic acceptance unique to children. "I guess not. Dad says the baby is my half-brother or sister, so I should get to know them. But it's weird that Dad likes Vanessa now instead of you." The simplified understanding of adult relationships would have been amusing in other circumstances. Relationships are complicated, Lucas. But the important thing to remember is that none of this changes how much Dad and I both love you. As we pulled into our driveway, I noticed an unfamiliar car parked across the street, a silver sedan with a man sitting in the driver's seat. He appeared to be reading something, occasionally glancing up at our house. Alarm bells rang instantly. After yesterday's break-in and Nathan's attempt to recruit surveillance from Lucas's friends' parents, an unknown observer watching our home seemed potentially sinister. "Lucas, go straight inside and lock the door," I instructed calmly but firmly. I'll be right behind you. Why? What's wrong? He asked, immediately picking up on my tension. Nothing's wrong, I assured him, keeping my voice even. I just need to check something. Go on now. Once Lucas was safely inside, I took a photo of the car's license plate, then approached cautiously. The man looked up as I neared, rolling down his window. Can I help you? I asked, keeping a safe distance. Mrs. Wilson? He inquired, reaching into his jacket. I stepped back instinctively, prompting him to freeze his movement. I'm just getting my identification, he said, slowly extracting a leather wallet. I'm Michael Dawson, private investigator. I've been retained to conduct surveillance as part of a divorce proceeding. He displayed a professional license that appeared legitimate, though I wasn't close enough to verify details. Retained by whom? I demanded, though the answer was obvious. I'm not at liberty to disclose my client, he replied with practiced neutrality. But I'm operating within legal parameters for Washington State. I'm required to identify myself if directly confronted, which I've done. The calculated precision of this approach, not illegal, but deliberately intimidating, carried Nathan's new strategic fingerprints. You're watching my home, I stated, where my minor child lives. I'm conducting legal observation from public property, he corrected. I don't enter private property or photograph minors. I'm simply documenting comings and goings. I took a deep breath, resisting the urge to order him away. His presence was unsettling but apparently legal. Reacting emotionally would only provide fodder for his reports back to Nathan. I've documented this interaction, I said instead, indicating my phone. Any deviation from the legal limitations you've claimed to observe will be reported immediately to both the police and the court handling our divorce proceedings. He nodded with professional detachment. Understood, Mrs. Wilson. Have a good day. I returned to the house, hands trembling slightly as I locked the door behind me. Lucas looked up from where he'd been watching through the window. Who was that man? He asked. Just someone who was looking for an address, I lied, hating the necessity but unwilling to explain private investigators to a 10-year-old. Nothing important. I called Diane immediately, describing the encounter in detail. It's legal but aggressive, she confirmed. Nathan's trying to intimidate you while gathering potential evidence. Visitors to the home, your comings and goings, anything that might serve his narrative. Can we stop it? We can request limits through the court, she said. No surveillance during certain hours, minimum distance requirements. But we can't prohibit it entirely without specific evidence of harassment. It feels like harassment, I said, anger rising. Having someone watching my home, documenting my movements with my son. It's meant to, Diane agreed. The psychological impact is half the strategy. Nathan wants you unsettled, looking over your shoulder, second-guessing. Normal activities. Well, it's working, I admitted. Document everything, Diane advised. Take daily photos of the surveillance vehicle, note times and locations. If a pattern of intimidation emerges, we can use it against Nathan in court. The rest of the weekend passed under the uncomfortable awareness of being watched. The silver sedan remained across the street until nightfall, replaced in the morning by a different vehicle, a dark SUV with tinted windows, but clearly serving the same purpose. By Monday morning, I felt the strain of constant observation. Simple activities, taking Lucas to school, stopping for coffee, returning home, took on performative qualities, knowing each movement might be noted and potentially misconstrued, in service of Nathan's narrative. Lucas, thankfully, remained oblivious, excited about his school's upcoming science fair and the volcano model we'd agreed to build together. His resilience continued to amaze me, though occasional questions about his father revealed the uncertainty beneath his adaptive exterior. The volcano project provided welcome distraction Monday evening, our dining table covered with papier-mâché and paint, as we constructed a reasonably realistic Mount Rainier. Dad would know how to make the lava look better, Lucas observed, as we mixed red food coloring with baking soda and vinegar for a test eruption. He's good at science stuff. The casual comment revealed the complicated reality we were navigating. Nathan had been an engaged father in specific areas that aligned with his interests. Science projects, baseball coaching, summer camping trips. These were domains where Nathan had shown up consistently for Lucas. Other areas, doctor appointments, school conferences, daily emotional support, had fallen primarily to me. "We can FaceTime him if you want help with the lava," I offered, surprising myself with the suggestion. Despite everything, I wanted Lucas to maintain his positive connection with his father. Lucas brightened. "Really? Can we?" I nodded, reminding myself that supporting Lucas's relationship with Nathan was about Lucas's needs, not my feelings about his father. "Let me text him first to make sure he's available," I said, reaching for my phone. I composed a carefully neutral message. "Lucas, would like your input on his science project Volcano if you're available for a brief FaceTime call." Nathan's response came quickly. "Of course, any time for Lucas." The civility was so at odds with his recent behavior that I found myself momentarily suspicious of ulterior motives. Was this recorded somehow? Would he try to use the call to gather evidence about our home environment? Setting aside the paranoia that surveillance had begun to foster, I initiated the FaceTime call, positioning the phone so the volcano project was visible but keeping the rest of the house out of frame. A precaution that felt necessary but sad in its implications. Nathan answered immediately, his face appearing on screen. The contrast with the last time I'd seen him was stark. Gone was the disheveled, red-faced man who had threatened me over the phone. In his place was a Nathan I recognized, clean-shaven, hair neatly styled, wearing a collared shirt that suggested professional composure. "Hey, buddy," he greeted Lucas with genuine warmth. "Mom says you're building Mount Rainier?" Lucas launched enthusiastically into an explanation of the project, holding up various components for his father's approval. Nathan responded with appropriate enthusiasm, offering suggestions for the lava mixture and eruption mechanism. I stayed just out of frame, supervising without participating, giving Lucas this moment with his father while maintaining the boundaries the court had established. "When can I see you for real?" Lucas eventually asked, the question I'd been dreading. Nathan's expression flickered briefly before settling into careful neutrality. "Soon, buddy. There's some grown-up stuff to work out first. But I miss you. Like crazy." "Mom said there are special rules now," Lucas continued, "about when we can hang out." Nathan's eyes flicked toward me, though I remained off camera. "That's right," he said, his voice remarkably even. "Just temporary while we sort things out, but I promise we'll have lots of time together soon." The measured response surprised me. I had expected Nathan to undermine the court restrictions or place blame on me. Instead, he had acknowledged the reality of our situation without frightening or confusing Lucas. "Will Vanessa be there too?" Lucas asked with a child's direct curiosity. "And the baby?" Nathan hesitated visibly. "The baby won't be here for a few more months," he explained carefully. "But yes, Vanessa is part of my life now, and eventually you'll probably spend some time with both of us." "Is she nice?" Lucas pressed. "She is," Nathan affirmed. "But no one could ever replace your mom, buddy. You know that, right?" The unexpected acknowledgement caught me off guard. Was this genuine consideration for Lucas's feelings, or carefully crafted optics for an interaction Nathan assumed I would document? "I know," Lucas said simply. "Mom's mom and Vanessa's Vanessa." The uncomplicated acceptance of his new reality both relieved and saddened me. Children adapted, yes, but should they have to adapt to such adult complications? "I should go," Nathan said after a few more minutes of volcano discussion. "But I'm really proud of your project, Lucas. Send me pictures when it's done, okay? Okay, Dad. Love you. Love you too, buddy. More than anything. After the call ended, Lucas returned to the volcano with renewed energy, implementing several of Nathan's suggestions. I watched him work, troubled by the stark contrast between Nathan's interaction with Lucas and his recent behavior toward me. Dad seemed happy, Lucas observed as he carefully painted lava flows down the volcano's side. I'm glad, I said truthfully. Whatever my feelings about Nathan, Lucas deserved a father who could set aside adult conflicts to maintain a loving relationship with his son. Later that night, after Lucas was asleep, I received a text from Nathan. Thank you for the call with Lucas. I appreciate it. The simple acknowledgement seemed sincere, lacking the undercurrent of manipulation present. In our recent interactions, I considered not responding but eventually typed, Lucas needs his father in his life. That hasn't changed. Nathan replied, I've started the psychiatric evaluation the court ordered. First session was today. This voluntary disclosure surprised me. Nathan could have dragged his feet on the evaluation, delaying the process and the restoration of unsupervised visitation. His prompt compliance suggested either genuine concern for maintaining his relationship with Lucas or strategic positioning for the upcoming temporary orders hearing, or perhaps both. I responded with neutral acknowledgement. That's good to hear. Rachel, came his next message. I know you won't believe this, but I never wanted to hurt Lucas. Or you. Things just spiraled. The attempted justification resurrected the anger I'd been carefully managing. Things hadn't spiraled. Nathan had made deliberate choices repeatedly over months. He had calculated risks, hidden evidence, constructed elaborate lies. Rather than engaging with his narrative, I replied simply, We should communicate through our attorneys. Right, he responded after a pause. Of course. Good night, Rachel. The brief exchange left me unsettled. The Nathan who had appeared on FaceTime and in these texts seemed so different from the man who had threatened to destroy me, who had recruited private investigators to surveil my home, who had attempted to turn our social circle against me. Which version was the performance? Which was real? Perhaps both were aspects of the same complex person, emerging under different pressures. The following morning brought another shift in the evolving situation. An email from Diane contained a formal settlement proposal from Lawrence Chen, markedly different from their initial position. The new offer. Nathan would accept the prenup's enforcement regarding the house and my gallery business. He would claim only 20% of the joint investment accounts rather than 40%. He would agree to continue the supervised visitation with Lucas for 2 months, after which he requested a review based on his compliance and psychiatric evaluation results. In exchange, he asked that I drop any potential claims related to his company shares, which the prenup technically left vulnerable, due to the infidelity clause. The revised settlement offer sat on my kitchen island for 3 days while I weighed my options. Each element required careful consideration, not just for the immediate future, but for the long-term implications for both Lucas and myself. Diane had analyzed it from every legal angle, concluding that while it represented a significant retreat from Nathan's initial demands, it still offered him more than he was legally entitled to under the prenup. The company shares are worth considerably more than 20% of your joint investments, she had pointed out during our strategy session. He's trying to protect his most valuable asset while appearing to make concessions elsewhere. Even with the prenup's infidelity clause, challenging Nathan's ownership of his company shares would involve a protracted legal battle, something that would drain both financial and emotional resources better directed toward Lucas's well-being and my gallery expansion. On the 4th morning, I called Diane with my decision. I want to counter, I said as she answered. I'll accept the core framework, but with modifications. I'm listening, she replied, and I could hear her keyboard clicking as she prepared to take notes. First, I'll agree not to challenge his company shares, I began. That avoids a lengthy court battle neither of us needs. Second, I'll accept the continued supervised visitation with review after psychiatric evaluation. Lucas needs his father in his life, and Nathan seems to be making genuine efforts there. And the investment accounts, Diane prompted. 15% instead of 20, I said firmly. And I want a non-disparagement clause that extends beyond social media. No more attempting to recruit our friends or Lucas's teachers as informal surveillance. No more private investigators watching our home. Diane made a thoughtful noise. The non-disparagement and surveillance limitations are reasonable and likely to be granted. The investment percentage might be a sticking point. It's a starting position, I acknowledged, echoing her earlier strategic framing. But I'm prepared to hold firm on stopping the private investigators. Lucas noticed the car across the street yesterday and asked if we were in danger. This has to stop. I'll draft the counter immediately, Diane assured me. Anything else? I hesitated, then voiced the idea that had been forming since my conversation with Lucas about Vanessa. I want to include provisions for how Lucas will be introduced to Vanessa and eventually the baby. Structured gradual integration rather than Nathan suddenly presenting them as a package deal family. That's unusually forward-thinking, Diane observed. Most clients in your position fight to keep the affair partner away from their child entirely. I'm thinking long-term, I explained. Lucas will have a half-sibling. Whether I like it or not, Vanessa will be in his life to some degree. I'd rather control how that relationship develops than have Nathan handle it impulsively. After ending the call with Diane, I found myself drawn to the deck overlooking the lake. The same spot where I'd contemplated my future after the anniversary dinner disaster. The 6 weeks since that night had transformed my reality completely. My marriage was definitively over. My husband had revealed capacities for both betrayal and calculation I hadn't fully recognized. My son was adjusting to a fractured family structure. My carefully constructed life had been dismantled and was now being reassembled in an entirely new configuration. Yet alongside the pain and disruption, unexpected strengths had emerged. My gallery was thriving, perhaps because I'd channeled extra energy into work as a stabilizing force. Lucas, while occasionally confused and sad, was demonstrating remarkable resilience. My support network had proven both wider and more loyal than I'd anticipated, with friends and colleagues rallying around us despite Nathan's attempts to sow doubt about my stability. Most surprisingly, I had discovered my own capacity for strategic thinking under pressure. The woman who had calmly presented the prenuptial agreement at her anniversary dinner, who had navigated emergency court hearings and police interventions, who had maintained composure while being surveilled. She was a stranger to me 6 weeks ago. Now she was simply who I had become out of necessity. My phone chimed with a text from Greg Bennett. Board meeting concluded. Permanent replacement CEO search initiated. Nathan officially removed from operational role but retains board seat. Thought you should know. Another piece of the puzzle falling into place. Nathan would maintain his ownership stake and board position, ensuring future financial stability, but had lost the daily power and prestige of running the company he had founded. The consequences of his personal choices had permanently altered his professional identity. I wondered briefly how Vanessa was processing these developments. The powerful CEO she had become involved with was now diminished in status, facing financial restrictions, undergoing psychiatric evaluation, and limited to supervised visitation with his son. Was she reconsidering her choices? Adjusting her expectations? Planning an exit strategy? A notification appeared on my phone, an email from an address I didn't recognize. The subject line read simply, "From Vanessa, please read." Curiosity overcame caution, and I opened it. "Rachel, I know you don't owe me any consideration, and that your attorneys have probably advised against any direct communication. I'm writing anyway, because I believe there are things you should know that might influence the decisions you're making. Nathan is unraveling. The company was his identity, and losing operational control has triggered something dark in him. He's drinking heavily, making plans he won't discuss, and fixating on regaining control of the company, of his finances, of Lucas, of everything. I'm telling you this not to gain sympathy or advantage, but because I'm genuinely concerned for Lucas. And yes, for my unborn child who will share Nathan as a father. I never intended to destroy your marriage. Nathan told me repeatedly that your relationship was effectively over, that you stayed together for appearances and for Lucas. By the time I realized the extent of his deception, I was already pregnant. I don't expect forgiveness or friendship. But perhaps we can find a way forward that protects both children involved. They're innocent in all this, and they'll be connected for life regardless of what happens between the adults. I've retained my own attorney now. Nathan doesn't know yet. I'm preparing for the possibility that he may abandon this pregnancy as his other priorities shift. I wanted you to know that I'm not counting on Nathan's promises anymore. Vanessa. I sat with the email for several minutes, assessing its authenticity and implications. Was this a genuine warning from a woman recognizing the precariousness of her position? Or another manipulative tactic coordinated with Nathan, perhaps intended, to position Vanessa as reasonable and concerned while casting further doubt on Nathan's stability? The detail about retaining her own attorney suggested authenticity. It indicated Vanessa was taking steps to protect herself independently, which aligned with someone recognizing Nathan's unreliability. Rather than responding directly, I forwarded the email to Diane with a brief note. Thoughts? Particularly concerned about the making plans he won't discuss part. Her reply came within minutes. Concerning if genuine, requesting emergency hearing to formalize temporary orders immediately rather than waiting for scheduled date next week. We'll call shortly. The accelerated timeline proved justified. Within 24 hours, Nathan's attorney withdrew the settlement offer entirely, replacing it with a significantly more aggressive position that demanded 50% of all assets, regardless of the prenup, joint custody with no supervision requirements, and vague allegations about my interference with his relationship with Lucas. He's in free fall, Diane assessed during our emergency strategy session. Chen is clearly trying to contain him, but Nathan is driving the strategy now against legal advice. What triggered this reversal? I asked, though I suspected the answer. Hard to know for certain, Diane said diplomatically. But timing suggests Vanessa's independent legal representation may have been the catalyst. If she's no longer following his script, she becomes another variable he can't control. The emergency hearing was scheduled for the following day, expedited, due to the escalating volatility of the situation. Judge Watkins, familiar with our case from the initial emergency orders, would preside. That evening, as Lucas and I worked on homework at the kitchen table, a thunderous knocking at the front door startled us both. I checked the security camera feed on my phone, stomach dropping when I saw Nathan on the porch, clearly intoxicated, swaying slightly as he continued pounding on the door. Stay here, I instructed Lucas firmly, moving to the front hall. Is that Dad? Lucas asked, recognizing the voice now shouting my name through the door. Yes, but he's not supposed to. Be here, I explained, keeping my voice calm despite my racing heart. I need you to go to your room and stay there until I tell you it's okay to come out. Can you do that for me? Lucas nodded solemnly, eyes wide but trusting as he headed upstairs. Once he was safely in his room, I called 911, reporting Nathan's violation of the court order while keeping my voice low enough that Lucas wouldn't hear from upstairs. Rachel, open the damn door! Nathan shouted, his voice slurring. I know you're in there. I want to see my son. I didn't respond, simply waiting by the phone until I heard police sirens approaching. Through the security feed, I watched Nathan turn toward the sound, momentary confusion crossing his face before he straightened, attempting to compose himself as two police officers approached. The conversation was brief. Nathan gesticulated wildly, pointing at the house. The officers remained calm, one consulting a tablet, likely confirming the existing court order. Finally, Nathan was escorted to a patrol car, not in handcuffs, but clearly being removed from the property. A gentle knock followed. When I answered, an officer explained that Nathan had been detained for violating the court order but not arrested. "We've called him a ride," the officer explained. "He's intoxicated, but not combative with us. However, this incident will be documented and reported to the court. Given the existing orders, you might want to consult your attorney about next steps." After they left, I went upstairs to find Lucas sitting on his bed, knees drawn up to his chest. "Dad was yelling," he said quietly as I sat beside him. "Was he mad at me?" "No, sweetheart," I assured him, wrapping an arm around his shoulders. "Dad is going through a hard time right now. He's not angry with you. He loves you very much. But he's not making good choices, and that's why there are special rules about when he can see you." Lucas leaned against me. "Is he going to jail?" "No," I said, choosing honesty within age-appropriate boundaries. "But he did break the rules the judge made, so there might be consequences for that." "Like when I break rules and lose screen time?" Lucas asked, his child's mind seeking familiar comparisons. Despite everything, I smiled slightly. "Something like that? Yes. Adults have different consequences, but the principle is similar." Lucas seemed to accept this explanation, and after reading him an extra chapter of his current favorite book, he settled into sleep more easily than I had feared. Downstairs, I called Diane despite the late hour, knowing she would want immediate details of the incident. As expected, she was already strategizing our approach for the emergency hearing. "This is the leverage we needed," she said bluntly. "Nathan has now demonstrated that he cannot respect court orders even for a limited time. The psychiatric evaluation results won't even matter now. His behavior has spoken for itself." The next morning, Lucas went to school with no mention of the previous night's events, his resilience once again both impressing and concerning me. Had he simply compartmentalized the incident, or was he developing unhealthy coping mechanisms by suppressing his reactions? The emergency hearing proceeded with unexpected efficiency. Judge Watkins, clearly displeased by Nathan's violation of her previous orders, listened to evidence of the incident with thinning lips and narrowed eyes. Nathan, present with his attorney, but subdued in a way that suggested either strategic coaching or the aftermath of his previous night's intoxication, avoided meeting my gaze throughout the proceedings. The judge's ruling was decisive. The court finds that Mr. Wilson has demonstrated an inability to comply with even basic court orders. His arrival at the marital residence while intoxicated, demanding to see the minor child in direct violation of supervised visitation requirements, shows poor judgment and potential risk to both Mrs. Wilson and the child's emotional well-being. Therefore, the court is extending the emergency orders with modifications. Mr. Wilson's visitation with the minor child will remain supervised, but now must occur at a professional visitation facility, rather than with an approved family supervisor. Mr. Wilson is ordered to complete not only the previously required psychiatric evaluation, but also alcohol assessment and any recommended treatment. The court is also issuing a restraining order prohibiting Mr. Wilson from coming within 500 feet of the marital residence or Mrs. Wilson's place of business. Mrs. Wilson's request to formalize the prohibition against private surveillance is granted. Mr. Wilson is ordered to immediately terminate any private investigation services monitoring Mrs. Wilson or the marital home. These orders will remain in effect until the final divorce hearing, which the court is expediting given the circumstances. Temporary child support and spousal maintenance provisions outlined in Mrs. Wilson's filings are approved as submitted. As we left the courthouse, Lawrence Chen approached us, his expression grave. "Mrs. Wilson, Ms. Rivera, a moment, if I may." Diane positioned herself slightly in front of me, professional protection in human form. Yes, counselor? My client has authorized me to reinstate settlement discussions, Chen said formally. Recent events have clarified certain realities for him. Diane's expression remained neutral. We're open to good faith negotiations that prioritize Lucas's well-being and Mrs. Wilson's safety. Chen nodded, his gaze shifting briefly to me. Mrs. Wilson, I want to convey that despite recent appearances, Mr. Wilson does genuinely care for his son. His actions, while inexcusable, stem from emotional turmoil rather than malice toward you or Lucas. The carefully worded semi-apology carried the distinct impression of a lifeboat being lowered from a sinking ship. Nathan, finally recognizing the complete collapse of his position, was attempting to salvage whatever dignity and relationship with Lucas remained possible. His actions endangered my son's emotional well-being and violated explicit court orders, I replied evenly. But I have never intended to sever Lucas's relationship with his father. I want Nathan to get the help he needs to be a stable, positive presence in Lucas's life. Chen seemed to assess the sincerity of my statement before nodding. I believe we can work toward that shared goal. I'll have a revised proposal to Ms. Rivera by tomorrow morning. As he walked away, Diane gave me an appraising look. That was remarkably generous, given circumstances. It wasn't generosity, I corrected. It was pragmatism. Lucas needs his father, not the volatile, unstable version of the past few weeks, but the father who taught him to throw a baseball and helped with science projects. If there's a path to Nathan becoming that person again, I have to support it, for Lucas's sake. 3 months later, I stood in the expanded space of my new gallery in the International District, watching as staff arranged the final pieces for our grand opening. The renovation had transformed the former warehouse into a light-filled showcase for emerging Northwest artists, with the original industrial elements preserved as a framework for the contemporary art. The gallery expansion had become my focus. During the turbulent divorce proceedings, a creative outlet and professional achievement entirely separate from the dissolution of my marriage. What had begun as a contingency plan during those early suspicious months had blossomed into a thriving reality that now employed 6 people and represented 27 artists. My phone buzzed with a text from the visitation center. Session concluded successfully. Lucas enjoyed the museum photos Mr. Wilson brought. Next visit scheduled for Saturday as planned. The structured visitation had continued for the full 3 months, but reports had been increasingly positive. Nathan, finally taking his psychiatric treatment and alcohol assessment seriously, had maintained perfect compliance with all court requirements. The father Lucas needed was gradually re-emerging from the chaos of anger and entitlement that had temporarily consumed him. The final divorce decree had been signed 2 weeks earlier, its terms reflecting both the prenuptial agreement's core provisions and the realities that had emerged during the proceedings. The Madison Park house remained with Lucas and me, though we had decided to sell it and find a new home without the complicated memories. The joint investment accounts were divided 85-15 in my favor. As per the prenup's infidelity clause, Nathan's company shares remained entirely his, allowing him financial stability despite his reduced role. Child support was set at a level that maintained Lucas's standard of living while acknowledging Nathan's changed income situation. The supervised visitation would continue for another 3 months, then transition to standard visitation if Nathan maintained compliance. Vanessa had given birth 2 weeks ago, a boy named James, who would be Lucas's half-brother. The structured integration plan I had insisted on would begin in another month, with Lucas meeting his new sibling in the controlled environment of the visitation center before any home visits would be considered. Vanessa and I had established a cautious, distant civility, not friendship certainly, but a pragmatic communication channel focused exclusively on the children's needs. Her own legal arrangements with Nathan had been finalized separately. with Harrison Wilson surprisingly establishing a trust for his new grandson, parallel to the one he had created for Lucas. The final piece of art was hung, a large abstract, canvas by a promising young artist from Tacoma, all sweeping blues and unexpected angles that somehow conveyed both movement and stillness simultaneously. "Perfect," I told the installation team, signing off on the placement. "That completes the main gallery." As they packed up their tools, I walked the space alone, considering the journey of the past 5 months. The night of my anniversary dinner had shattered the life I thought I had, revealing both betrayal and strength I hadn't known existed. The prenup I had presented that night had been just the beginning, not just of a divorce, but of a complete transformation. The woman who had received that text message while setting the table for dinner no longer existed. In her place stood someone more resilient, more strategic, more independently confident than she had ever been. The gallery around me was physical proof of that evolution, a space I had conceived, financed, and created entirely on my own terms. My phone buzzed again. Lucas, texting from his friend's house where he was spending the afternoon. "Mom, Ethan's mom says we can have pizza for dinner. Is that okay? Also, I told Dad about my art project when I saw him today, and he wants to come to the school exhibition next month. He said he has to ask you first. Can he?" The simple question contained multitudes. Nathan acknowledging boundaries. Lucas continuing to value his father's presence. The normal childhood desire for pizza with friends continuing despite the upheaval of recent months. I typed back, "Pizza is fine. And yes, Dad can come to your art exhibition. We'll work out the details." Then I slipped my phone back into my pocket and continued my solitary tour of the gallery, each carefully selected piece reflecting some aspect of transformation, reinvention, and unexpected beauty emerging from disruption. The woman who had discovered her husband's betrayal 5 months ago could never have imagined this outcome. Not just survival, but genuine thriving. The prenup had protected my financial security, yes, but it was my own resilience that had truly saved me. The documents I had gathered, the preparations I had made, the boundaries I had established. These were not just legal strategies, but acts of self-preservation that had created the foundation for rebuilding. Tomorrow, the gallery would open to the public. Lucas would proudly show his friends the small office I had created for him in the back, complete with art supplies and books. Nathan would continue his treatment and supervised visitation, gradually earning back the right to be the father Lucas deserved. Vanessa and baby James would begin their careful integration into Lucas's expanded definition of family. And I would continue forward not as Nathan's betrayed wife or Lucas's devoted mother, or even as the gallery's successful owner, though I was all these things. I would move forward simply as myself, finally and completely centered in my own story rather than orbiting someone else's. Outside the gallery windows, Seattle's late summer sun broke through the perpetual clouds, casting unexpected light across the new space, illuminating possibilities I was only beginning to imagine. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories. Right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out.